listeners. We're back with another episode of Conversations with Therapists. Jen and I are in a new environment today, so we're testing it out to see how we like it. But welcome, Chantia Sturman. We're so excited to have
Hi.
you. Chantia is a licensed marriage and family therapist in Oregon. I almost said the state of Washington. She's in Oregon,
Close.
specializing it's all kind of in that same area,
It
just way
is.
different.
It is.
So you specialize in working with primarily women dealing with food struggles, eating struggles, body image issues, and some occasional teenagers, I guess, is
Yep.
what you're
Yep. I get some
starting to see.
teenagers sprinkled in, but primarily I'll work with adults.
Yeah. Okay, which is so cool. So we're going to talk about that. And then in addition to your private practice, you're launching a new course called Darling
Yes.
Arise. And this course is going to focus on helping moms talk to their daughters about body image, whether it be they're struggling with issues or just needing to have the words to have those talks with them. And I think that's so cool. So I can't wait to hear more about that. So let's jump in and talk first about your private practice and kind of what started that journey and how you got to helping this very specific, like, I love it, niche community of people.
Yeah. So my private practice, Tapestry Counseling, as you said, I work primarily with women who are struggling with eating disorders or body image struggles. Um, More recently, I've been getting more teenage requests, moms calling about their teenage daughters. And yeah, most of my clients are in a place where they're trying to figure out how to break free from those struggles so they can focus on the deeper things in life that they want to accomplish. And so, yeah, the course actually came from one day I was talking to my husband after getting a lot of requests from moms to help their daughters. And I was a little bit overwhelmed by that and just kind of heartbroken that I couldn't help all
Yeah.
the girls that were needing help. And so my husband actually had the idea that I should start a course that teaches moms how to talk to daughters about body image and just healing and also understanding that moms themselves are struggling in that area. And that's where the course came from, just kind of birthed from my private practice work
And your husband, which I think is so cool.
and my
Like
husband.
we love a male ally in terms of that.
Yes,
I'm so
yes, he's a
excited
good one.
because usually when we speak to therapists on this show, we're talking about, people who are recovering from emotional neglect and trauma in like some way. And I think this conversation is going to be so specific because we're dealing with eating disorders, we're dealing with body image, we're dealing with women's health issues, which I cannot get enough of. I feel like women's health issues is not talked about nearly enough.
So true.
And
It's
so,
true.
how did you get into this niche? You didn't start with nutrition and body image. You started where at?
Yeah,
With your
so I
private practice.
actually, yeah, my private, well, so I originally, when I first got into doing kind of the clinical work you have to do when you're in grad school and then going for licensure, I met a therapist who has a practice or that works with eating disorders primarily. It's an intensive outpatient program, and they also do partial hospitalization. And
Wow.
I did some work there, and that's where I kind of got into the nitty gritty with eating disorders. And that actually started with teenagers. The work that I started doing was with teenagers. And so that's where my experience came from that kind of got me into it in private practice. But even before that, I took a class at UC San Diego on eating disorders. And I was just fascinated by how that can be something that someone struggles with. And now I understand it deeper since I get the opportunity to talk to women about it every day. But at the time, it was just so new to me that it was something I really wanted to learn more about.
Yeah, that's it. When you're talking about you see primarily women, I don't know if it's just like media only really talks, or maybe it was like my high school experience, like middle school. I don't really realize like talking to grown women about like potential eating disorders, but now that I'm thinking about it, we
Oh yeah.
changed the narrative. It's more like diet dieting or like this is
Yes.
the new fad diet I'm on. So I guess it's
Yep.
when you were like, I don't really see teenagers, I'm like, well, how do you get
Yeah.
clients?
Where are
But
they
it's
coming
just like
from?
it
Yeah.
morphs, like the language
It does.
changes. Um,
It does. Well, that's interesting too, because a lot of times we think about like the teenage girls and how we're so sad for the world they're growing up in. But I talk to women who are struggling just as much. And it started then, but no one, I mean, I think more now people are looking at it, but it's kind of like, oh, well, you're fine. Just go on your diet, do your thing. But for the girls, we're looking at them like, gosh, what can we do to help them? But the moms were like, eh, you know. So
Yeah.
it's nice being able to help them because then they help their daughters. Or they can have the tools to help their daughters.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, and I think that's really cool because, like, I don't know about you, but I didn't really think about it in terms of, like, my own rhetoric and actions until I had daughters,
Hmm.
and they're like
Yep,
I mean, that whole, like, really cheesy, like, they're little sponges, they really are,
they
and,
are.
like, you're like, "Oh, I'm modeling all this really good behavior," whatever, but you kind of forget about, like, your own comments
Yep,
about yourself and
the
stuff
small
like that.
things.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
think that that's fascinating. I'm really glad that you're starting this course, but, um, I think we need to go back a little bit and talk about, like, why you decided this was the way to go. Like, I know when we talked prior, because 'cause we're helping you build your course. I know when
Yes,
we talked prior to this, you had mentioned that you took, like, this course in college that you were like, "Done, this is what I wanna do."
yes.
And I
Oh
just think
yeah.
that's so fascinating that so I want you to talk about that little course that you took and why that was like, "Yep, that's what I'm doing in life."
Yeah, yeah. When I think I told you too previously that even before that was the Dr. Phil episode I watched. And
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
there was the girl in the Dr. Phil episode and I was watching it and just so sad, just kind of watching when you work with people who are struggling with eating disorders, there's the healthy self, which can be kind of a difficult word because healthy can go either way. But like the positive healthy self, and then there's the eating disorder self. And so when you talk to someone they understand, okay, yes, if I don't eat, um, I'm going to end up in the hospital. They understand that rationally, but when you look at the eating disorder, it says, but will I? Or, but if you eat this pizza, you really are going to explode and gain a ton of weight. And so they understand they're intelligent people, and so you can see that. And I remember looking at that girl, and I didn't know the depths of it back then because I didn't have the education or the experience, but you can kind of see that there's the person who they really are, and then there's the eating disorder self, and that's the part that's kind of driving them off course, where they want to go.
Yeah.
And so in the course, we learned a lot about at UC San Diego, the course that I took, we learned a lot about just the underlying factors, what leads a person to have an eating disorder. There's a lot of biological, genetic factors that predispose, people are predispositioned. And so not everyone who's exposed to the same messages will struggle. But you get people who have all of those environmental factors and all those things in place, and then it's kind of a perfect storm. There's some temperament too, so it was really helpful to learn some of the foundations before working with real people.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Do you find that your approach with teenagers versus like grown women or grown adults, is there a difference in how you approach the conversation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with the adults, we can talk a lot more. I mean, once they get to the point where they're eating regularly and their brain is online and they're able to do those things. If it's someone who's restricting, because I also have quite a few clients who are looking at like binge eating, but or emotional eating too. But with adults, I find that we can get a lot deeper into purpose. And so talking about what is the eating disorder trying to accomplish? Is it trying to give value? Is it trying to serve as a distraction from stress, whether that's in your marriage or with raising kids or trying to find, work things like your identity? And so with adults, I can get a little bit deeper into that because that's just where they're at, whether they're 30, 40, 50. With kids, they're not so focused. Teenagers are not so focused on, what's my purpose? They're just trying to figure out, how do I get along with my boyfriend or who, whatever. It's a
Yeah.
little more now focused with the teenagers. Some of them are ready to look a little, kind of step back a little bit, zoom out. But for a lot of them, it's kind of more of the day to day. How do you manage stress? And those things are true for moms and women too. But I think they just mentally, the older you get, you kind of can look out a little bit further.
Yeah.
Are you seeing any patterns between like links to depression and anxiety with teenagers or social media use or
Oh, yeah.
anything that kind of sets it apart or anything that you find repetitive?
Hmm. Yeah, social media. But the thing is, social media gets us as women too. Just all the pressures, especially as moms, of, people showing up at their clean houses and,
Oh,
their perfect
those people are the
reels. And you're like, oh
worst.
my
The
goodness. And I love the
best and
moms
the
who actually
worst.
show, like, this is what my house actually looks like, and this is how I film. I like when moms show that. But
But if I could meal
um,
prep on Sunday, every Sunday,
yeah,
like I could
right.
manage, I could do this.
You just have to start recording it. That's what's going to hold you accountable. Record it.
Yes, there you go. There you go. But yeah, the pressures, I think the pressures are different, potentially when you're in high school versus when you're a mom raising kids. And so there's still the links with anxiety and depression though. It's just it looks different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
just
also
different
think
context of life.
like, like, are your teenagers that you're seeing, are they primarily in high school or are they like pre preteens, I guess, or
They're older.
okay.
Yeah, I now back in the day when I used to work in just the higher level of care, they would range. I mean, I think the youngest we had was 10. And it can start before that too, but we had a 10-year-old and then, up till college, that kind of 19, 18, 19. But now I tend to see, because I'm virtual, I tend to work with clients who are more motivated, which means sometimes that they're a little bit older, so 17, 16, 17 usually, and then early college years. I love working with college age young
Yeah,
adults too.
I'm sure they appreciate it too. Like I can't even imagine like thinking back on my college years, like what would my life have been like if I had a therapist? Like somebody to
Mhm.
just like
We still didn't even
kind of like ground me
I
back
know.
to like real world. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And not using
Center.
like 19-year-olds as your, "Oh, yeah, that's fine. You'll be fine. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
drink that. And then
As
afterwards,
they're sounding.
as you're like super wasted, let's go get a large Papa John's pizza and eat it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's normal.
Yes.
Totally normal.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's really cool the way that the narrative has shifted with therapy, like you said, Jen. Because I'll get some of my teenage girls, and they'll be, or my college age, and like, yeah, I told my friend about you. Like, I told her that my therapist, she needs a therapist. So it's just cool, when they actually need one. It's really cool that they could just talk openly and be proud that they're working on themselves.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like I mean, you're slightly older than me, so you even had even more of that like, ooh, mental health, like yikes,
Right.
you're crazy kind of a thing. But like I can only imagine if anybody, I think there might have been one person that I knew that was maybe once or twice had seen a therapist and it was totally from like a very obvious trauma.
oh yeah.
Like a very messy divorce, like they got like tossed around between their parents, something like that that was just like
Hmm.
totally like,
Very
oh,
obvious.
that makes sense why you're in
Very
therapy.
Yeah.
like a violent like problem.
Yeah, or like or actively struggling with like yeah, an eating
Now
disorder.
even my 8-year-old daughter has like brought up like therapy.
My child calls her school counselor the school therapist, and I'm like, uh-huh, she is.
Cute.
Well,
How
another
sweet.
fascinating part of your practice that I think is that you also frame a lot of your conversations within the context of the client's spirituality. So, can you tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about how those conversations work?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
why that came about or why that was like was that immediate? Did you go into your private practice knowing that you wanted to incorporate that or did it was that a trend you started?
Mhm. Yeah, so back when I used to work at that same practice, I also saw the eating disorder practice. I also had some clients who didn't have eating disorders, and some of those were people who were desperately searching for a Christian therapist, and I see that now. And so part of the reason why I started my practice knowing that a portion of my clients I would market to would be faith-based clients is because I know how hard it could be to find that. And sometimes it can be easy to think that that's just a small part of someone's life, but it's actually when it's a foundation of someone's life, it's everything. And so being able to talk about body image struggles and all of those things through the lens of faith can be really helpful and also a very strong protective factor for people as long as it's not done from the place of guilt or shame, of course, because sometimes that can be a balance you really have to navigate. But I just know how important it has been for me, and so I really want to be able to provide that space for people to show up with their
Yeah.
faith as well.
Are you seeing, like, primarily people within, like, one not religion because 'cause they're all Christian,
Mhm.
but, like, one kind of
Like
part?
denomination, is that what you're
Yeah, or
thinking?
they and then are those people, like, coming to you because this foundation that they grew up with, they're realizing maybe is correct or incorrect or, like,
Mhm.
how yeah, what are you primarily like, give us, like, an example of, like, something that you talk
Yeah. So there's a range. I would say most of them, if they are calling a therapist and saying, "Hey, this is really important to me," most of them are in a, I would say, healthy place in their faith in terms of, they're not struggling so much with like the hurt that can come from being in a faith community or any of those things. Both
Yeah,
of them. But I also have clients where, originally they showed up and they said, "Hey, I'm really looking for a Christian therapist," and they're also trying to figure out where does that fit in their life because they have been hurt by the church or by whoever it might be, or there might be some abuse. And so there really is a range, but most of them when they're calling are looking for just a safe place to incorporate their faith, whether that's like like actually talking about it in therapy, or whether it's just I feel like I don't have to explain any certain part
right.
of my faith to you because you already get it. So
Yeah, because I remember, I'm gonna keep, like, anonymity on some of this stuff, but, like,
yes.
I remember someone talking to me about, like, how they felt like their husband had come to them and they were just talking about how, like, grumpy and moody they had become, and, this was potentially at a part where it was either past menopause or in the midst of menopause, and,
Lots of
that's just
change.
so many different things happening at once, but, like, her first reaction was to go talk to a priest about it, and I'm just like, but, like, they're not a mental health professional, and I know that
Mhm.
like, I'm glad that there are people like you that can bridge that gap,
For sure.
who, like, understand the nuances of, like, faith and church and all that stuff, but also are professionally trained to deal with, like, the mental health aspects of it, because it is very confusing, like, if you grew up in this very like, I'm gonna use Catholic as because that they have so many rigid rules and stuff that I actually know about, um, thinking that, like, Jesus and God can fix all of your problems if you just, like, turn it over,
Mhm.
but also, like, if you can't, like, go talk to these priests. But then, like, a lot of those priests maybe aren't or they're men, so they don't
Right.
know those issues, and then
Yeah,
they're
feels
also
different.
maybe potentially not from the same background that you grew up in, like, maybe they're from another country because that's how the Catholic Church works, like, they call priests from all over the world. So they could come at it with, like, some cultures are very direct and very, like,
Mhm.
no sugarcoating, and
Yeah.
that could really hurt. Like, I could imagine going and, like, seeking counsel and them just coming at you like, "Well, this is what you have to do because you're this," or whatever, and it's like,
Yep.
"Okay,
Yeah, and I
thanks.
get that
I feel worse
sometimes.
now."
Yeah, I get that sometimes people who come and they've done all the praying and they've done all those things, which I believe there's power in that, but they come at a point of brokenness because they're not doing enough, and that's not actually when you look at like biblically, if you believe, from a Christian standpoint, biblically that's not what it's about. It's not about doing enough. It's about what has already been done and being able to walk in that. And so a lot of times they're coming in and they're saying, but it's gluttony and it's all of these things that I'm just not good enough because I can't fix it. And so coming from a mental health standpoint, you can help them understand, yes, there's a spiritual component for sure. There's also the mental health and there's also the medical and all of those things, and they're all created and all created by God, and we're able to address them all. And sometimes it's a prayer and yes, you're healed, and other times it's walking through kind of the what do they call them in war, where you're walking through the trenches. You're walking through the trenches with a therapist or a doctor or a coach, whoever it is, just really trying to dig a little bit deeper. And sometimes that's the story, not just the like I prayed and I was better. That's awesome. Sometimes it took me 10 years of digging and doing all this really hard work, and now I'm on the other side, which I think for a lot of people resonates, because for a lot of us it's not the quick. I did one thing and it was gone. So,
No, because that's not how the brain works.
So
mm-mm.
interesting. I was reading a mini study like recently on the Proverbs 31 woman,
Yeah.
not a biblical expert, but like the gist of the article was that there's this description of this woman in the Bible, Proverbs 31, I think. So feel
Yes.
free to
Yep.
double check that. And like
Yep.
the whole article is interesting because it was talking about um instead, like in the past it's been a checklist of what women like should be, and like the article is about reframing your thoughts of like, no, this is what you shouldn't be. This was already what's been given to you, and here's how you can like work with it, kind of thing. It's kind of like what you just said about that reframing, but taking it back to nutrition and health and stuff, like you go back to speaking um about how little studies have been done with women's bodies compared to like men's, and like now we're talking about gut health and how that affects menopause and women's health and like stuff. And so like even from religion to nutrition to therapy, like I feel like women are in this kind of world where we're all trying to
Yeah, and you didn't
realign
even
our
you haven't even
yeah.
hit on the whole,
Yeah.
like,
Oh
hormones portion
Yeah.
oof.
of the kicker that is a woman's body.
Yeah,
hmm
I think
Yeah.
it's wild.
Yeah,
Well, and
and then
it's
you, like
interesting. Oh, go ahead.
no, I just and then you throw in, like, if you have children or you don't have children, and then your body goes through those changes, or it doesn't because you can't or you can't, and, like,
hmm
that's a change and stuff. It's just like wham, 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 all these things being thrown at you. So it makes sense that, like, an eating disorder could arise, or because again, is it mostly because people feel they can control that? That is something that is in it.
A control factor.
Or, yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes if I say it too early in working with a client, they're like, no, no, that's not what it's about. And so I'll step back a notch because you really have to meet people where they're at. But at its core, a lot of times that's what it is. Sometimes, yeah, I will say yes. And also sometimes, you see trauma and not knowing how to deal with deeper trauma. Sometimes food does provide comfort. Or sometimes you do get, your brain will release neurotransmitters when you don't eat, just that kind of makes you feel a little bit better in the moment. And so sometimes there are those things happening too, but a lot of times it's really just, I can control this thing, something else that your brain is focused on instead of all this over here, because you don't know what to do with that. And so once you have someone who
Right.
can help you navigate what to do with that, then you don't need this thing, food struggles, all those things to focus on.
Interesting. We talk a lot about control with addiction specialists and
hmm
therapists. What's the what would you say is the fine line between treating addiction and then treating disorders or eating
I would
disorders?
think they're it's just a different form of it, right?
Addiction,
Well, and the tough part is when you're working with someone who's addicted, you just say stay away from it. With food, you can't get away from it. If you want to, I mean, if you want to survive, even if you don't want to survive, you'll end up in the hospital and they'll make you. And so it's I think big difference is that when you're looking at an addiction, even if we're looking like an exercise addiction, those types of things, it's just okay, stay away from it and we'll deal with it later, or we won't and you just stay away from it. But with food, you need it every single day. And so it's like the relationship that people are really working on when you're looking at food, because you have to have the relationship, whether it's a bad one or a good one, you have to have some type of relationship with it. So yeah, there are those, the behavioral kind of things that people will get into that kind of look like addiction with food, for sure.
Yeah. Are you seeing, okay, I have to bring it up 'cause it's so popular.
Yes. Yes.
The GLP-1s and the semaglutides
what's
and
that?
Ozempic.
Oh, as if
Um,
Yeah.
are
The fancy name.
say no more.
yeah, the fancy things that they're not even because they're so accessible now. They're becoming more and more accessible. I mean, I don't even like I mean, you need a doctor's prescription for it, but like it's everywhere.
Very
What are
accessible.
you seeing with that within your practice and like within are people coming to you because of that? Because yeah, I'll let you answer.
Yeah. I can only think of maybe a couple um, that I've encountered. And I think part of it is that the people who are coming my way at this point, and maybe it'll change kind of as we see the trajectory of like Ozempic, but the people who are coming my way are looking to break free from all the patterns and to really kind of go into the work there. I can't speak too much for people who are looking to use like the semaglutide, but what I've observed just from afar, so I might be wrong, but what I've observed from afar is that that's what they're going to go with. Maybe not so much the therapy route. Maybe there are people who are doing both, but it's more because it seems to work. I don't know. I don't know any of the medical things,
I
but
don't know anybody that's taken it that's now off of it, if that
yes,
makes
and
sense. So that's the
yeah,
kicker.
that's the kicker. And I
Is
know
it
I've heard a
addictive or
lot
there's something
about
on the timeline for treatment?
It's I don't know what its addictive qualities are, but what I mean is like I only know people that are doing it and seeing the results now. I don't know like is that
they get off.
actually changing the relationship with food and then because my understanding and my opinion of it is people who are using that are probably the like there's two obviously there's kind of two sides of an eating disorder. There's the like I've lost billions and billions of pounds, I'm so skinny, like
Right.
I'm that kind of scary
Hmm.
like person. And then there's like the complete opposite side of it where people are like like
Like
super
binge
over
eating.
binge eating, super overweight, like
Hmm.
they just cannot find the healthy um relationship with it without just dumping food constantly on them.
Yeah, balance.
Um
Hmm.
There's also body distortion,
dysmorphia, yeah.
yeah, I think that's
Hmm.
fascinating.
But yeah, so
Yeah,
like I don't obviously I'm not a doctor, I'm not anywhere near a doctor. So I don't know, but like that's the part that I'm concerned about because it's like what
yeah,
happens when you're done with the medication? Like
for sure.
are you ever done with it? Like I don't know. Um
What
so
I
that
would imagine too, because I know I've heard of people, like just kind of in my own life, not clinically, just personally, I've heard of people who say that it really quiets the food noise. But if you run out of medication, it comes right back. And so I don't know if that's how it is for everybody, but the the good mix, I would think, is that if a person really does have diabetes or whatever, if it's medically necessary for them to be on medication, the good mix would be the same that it would be if a person was getting weight loss surgery and they really needed it for their like longevity of their life would be the combination of okay, I can use this as a tool, but I also need to learn how to break free from the things that have maybe caused the issues that require the semaglutide or whatever it is, or the weight loss surgery. So if people can balance those, then maybe, once we see more with the medical side of things and the research, then I think it'll be clearer. But definitely there's still the psychological part that doesn't just go away because the
right. Yeah.
medication, it just doesn't.
Well, and I don't want to diminish anybody that takes that medication because I'm not in that position. I don't know, but like I have talked to people and friends that I know that have done it that feel like they have tried everything else.
Everything.
And it may just be a combination of like their body type, their genetics, their hormones, but this gives them the the results that they wanted. And so like I
Yeah.
think that that's really awesome and really cool and there's so much to be said. And again, it comes social media comes back into mind. Like even Jennifer and I have talked about like, after you have kids, like things just don't look the same
Hmm.
way that they
Yeah.
used to. And
Or
like
work the same
or
sometimes,
work, yeah, or
Yeah.
they're like you can't wear the same clothes or whatever it is.
Hmm.
And so like I get wanting to alter that
For
because
sure.
like, there are certain body parts that you can work out as hard as you want. You can lose all the weight, but that is not something that can
Shame.
change without a surgery kind of a thing. Um
Yes.
so I think
Yeah.
that that's really cool to kind of I think this will kind of tie into your course, but how you kind of get from like because I have kids, I have two little girls and am thinking about, like what is that going to look like if I do that and how do I talk to them
About
Hmm.
what you want to do.
about that change that
I
I
think
want to
this is
make.
a
And it just
daughters.
leads me
Yes.
Yeah.
right into
Yes.
Darlene.
Yes. Thank you.
All right,
Well,
tell us
and
about your course, and we'll get into it.
yes. Yes. Well, I was going to say, like, the message of the course and of my practice and hopefully of my life is that
Yeah.
um, there's definitely a balance because we see, like, okay, our bodies have changed and they don't work the same way and I can't fit the same clothes. And so culture says, well, you need to change that then. Like, you need to do something about it. And so what the course says and what I think is a little bit more, a lot more sustainable is, okay, yes, my body has changed and those things are true. Are there any medical reasons why my body needs to be different or go back to what it was before, which is very difficult sometimes for it to go back to what it was before? Is my function impacted? Am I not able to get in the car anymore? Am I not able to kayak like I used to like to? Am I not able to run? Okay. Is it getting in the way of me, like my sleep and my just basic functioning, my concentration? If all of those are no, then that's the point where we say, okay, well, how can I start to work on feeling at home in my body, like my new body that
Yeah.
is birthed some kids, or if I haven't had any kids that has gotten me through the first, 20, 30 years of my life, how do I start to come to terms with that? Because if there's no health problems or anything, this is the body that is going to like walk me in my purpose. And so that's the challenge because culture says it doesn't look the same, then you need to do something about it. But the thing that actually can last and get us really focused on like calling and drive is this is the body that is actually going to propel me forward if I allow it to, if I don't fight against it. And a lot of times, what I see with the women that I work with is that fight against this is where I want to be, but I'm going to put that right there until I figure out my body and feeling better about myself, and then I'll get to that. And a lot of times they don't get to that because it's a lifelong battle of trying to change your body when you have PCOS or hormone issues, or your body is just doing what it's meant to do as it gets older. And so the course, the hope as we're looking at the kind of first part of it, where we're working on moms recognizing the different struggles they've had over the years and the messages they want to give to their daughters, is recognizing, okay, what are the messages that helped me growing up? What are the messages that didn't help me? And how do I start to change and shift those so that I can give those longer term helpful messages to my daughter?
Yeah, and I think the other really cool part of your course is like there are so many messages that we don't associate or don't
Mhm.
realize are
They're
related
subtle.
to. And yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of like now, I mean, like, I don't know about you because you're not fully immersed in this, but like I like said something the other day and I was like, I probably could have said something better to that. Like that
Mhm.
was probably not ideal.
Oh, I've changed how I talk about it just based on looking at your social media templates that you've created for you. Like you had one about like quotes or things that you say to your daughter, but that you could say different. What was that?
Mhm.
We haven't even put those out there yet because I don't know the answers. Surprise, here we
Yes.
are.
I'll give you the answers.
And I think that we
Well,
need,
some
well,
ideas, I guess I should say.
yeah. Well, I think for this, it definitely needs like your hand holding, which is new for us because normally clients hand over their social media for us to just like keep it professional and going. But yours, like, these are, and I'm like, oh, I have a laundry list of questions. I just don't know the,
One was like a mom looking at herself in the mirror and going, ugh, like, ugh.
yeah,
And like the daughter is watching her do all this kind of struggle stuff while
yeah.
she stares at herself in the mirror.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah. And it's like, how do you have that kind of accepting relationship?
when you don't have it with yourself.
Yeah. Or, I mean,
Yeah, and
like,
it takes time.
There.
lean in.
Yes. Yes, it takes time, and it's a journey, and one thing that I really hope moms get from the course is that it's not about walking on eggshells or feeling like, oh shoot, I broke my daughter. It's about the longer term environment that you're creating. So you're gonna say the wrong thing, just like I'm gonna say the wrong thing, even though I do this every day. I'm gonna say the wrong thing to my daughter. And so it's not about the pressure because a lot of times as moms, it's like, okay, like I said, you need to have a clean house, you need to say all the right things, you need to, join all the mom groups and do everything perfectly. And so it's kind of breaking that. We don't want any of that because that's stressful and it adds to the problem. It's more about create just longer term. It's like your two buckets, and if you fill the one that is more creating a positive environment, you're going to have a little trickle into the not so helpful bucket. But ultimately, the bucket that has more in it is the one that's going to thrive. And so, in those moments, sometimes you might catch yourself when you're looking in the mirror and it's kind of like, ooh, that's where you say, "Okay, what is something, gosh, mom made that face because she's feeling a little bit uncomfortable in her body. But you know what? My tummy and the stretch marks that I'm looking at as I'm getting ready to go to the pool with you, those are signs that I was able to give birth to you, and that I'm so grateful for that. And so it's not about like being fake or anything like that. You can show that you can show to an extent that you struggle because the reality is even if you set a perfect environment for her, she probably will in some regards struggle too, but it doesn't have to be the same depth. It might just be little comparison things, you know? And so being able to show her it's real. It's real to have parts of your body you don't like, but how do we then move from that? Like, how do we come to terms with those things? And like I said, there is a place for in health for, okay, if I'm really struggling with, like I can think over the years of clients who really like they had physical goals where something really made them happy, like walking down the driveway, but they couldn't do that because of their body. And so, yes, there's room in health, there's a healthy place for changing that, but there's also a line because that can turn, that can go downhill quick if
Yeah.
we're not mindful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part is like at what point at what point do you focus on, this part of it versus like
Mhm.
the obsessive part of it? Like I
Yeah.
know like I like to work out. I like to go to Pilates and
Yes.
stuff like that. And that's really fun. And my kids like to go do yoga with me. They're garbage at it because they don't pay attention and they run around and they
Yeah.
play on under the mats and like all these things.
Yes, all the
Um,
fun things kids do.
but like, how do you answer your kid like, why are you starting to work out more? Or
Mhm.
whatever? Because like it's not a bad thing to work out and like want to be
Right.
healthy, but how do you explain that to a 5-year-old who maybe has seen a lot of that like, pinching of things and
Yes.
Yeah,
like
'cause, like, to your adult best friend, you're like, "Well, I'm getting ready for hot girl summer," but, like,
yeah.
to your
Totally.
daughter, you're like, "Oh, it makes me feel good.
Mom wants
I
to be
feel better."
strong like
Yeah.
a
Yes.
superhero.
Yes. Well, and that's where you get really honest with yourself first before you have those conversations with your daughter. You ask yourself, why am I doing this? Because sometimes the answer is, gosh, I really want to run whatever. I want to do a 3K this summer or 5K this summer because I think it would just be awesome. Like, okay, then that's awesome. But if it's more geared toward the social expectations and all of those things, that's where we get honest with ourselves and start to say, okay, where is that coming from? It may just be social pressures. And is that something I want to pass on to my daughter? Not in a shameful way, obviously. It's not like giving yourself like a mean talk or anything like that. From a place of compassion, asking yourself, where is this coming from? And recognizing if I'm not careful, then my daughter might start to get those same messages. Um, if I'm working out more because I really want to have a body that allows me to do the things I love and chase my kids and not feel tired and not feel cranky at the end of the day because I'm just exhausted, okay, then that's what we tell her. Is that mom really wants to be able to keep up with you because you're so fast,
You're
or
fast.
whatever. You're so
Yeah.
active. I want to be able to turn the yoga mats over and do all those things too, but I'm a little tired and moving our bodies in a way that feels good really helps that. And so even shifting the language from exercise and working out, which is very goal oriented, to moving. In the course, I talk about joyful movement, and so it's movement that feels good because a lot of times I'm going to run because that's what burns the most calories, even though I hate running.
Running is
Versus,
not joyful to some people.
yeah, yeah,
It
to
does
some
not
people
bring
it's
you
not.
joy, Marie Kondo.
Yes, it's punishment for some people. And so
Yeah.
our daughters see us punishing our bodies versus I'm doing yoga, which is actually really fun and stretching and all those things. And then for some reason, women, it is running, and that's fine too. But it's just a matter of what are we showing them, and it starts with us knowing that ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. So the other part of your course, because we've talked a lot about the
Yes.
mom side of it. So the
Yes.
kid side of it, because I know that this is a course for moms who want that verbiage as well. And yes, the kind of the first part of it is healing some of those inner negative thoughts. But then there's
Hmm.
also the like, okay, how do I then
Practical.
outwardly correctly say the things? Because, for example, your toddler eats garbage, like
Yes.
lives off of macaroni and cheese and
Yes.
wouldn't touch a vegetable with a 10-foot pole. So like how do you appropriately address something like that where it's not like shameful or like that's not healthy and you've eaten a bunch of junk today? Because I'm real good at saying that's a bunch of junk and I need to
Yeah.
Yeah,
stop.
I know.
It's
My daughter's
easy.
been
It's easy
called
to
a
say.
picky eater so much that one time she like broke down and she was like, "Why am I not normal?" And I was like, "Oh my God."
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Laughing like
yes.
it's like she sees her brothers like eating better. Her grandparents tell her she's picky. She's learned the term. Like, yeah, it's
Hmm.
heartbreaking.
But that's like one of those like words that I didn't associate with necessarily like body shaming, but it kind of is. In this
Yeah.
case, it really was. So
Hmm.
like,
One, it
yeah,
can, yeah, it can really start to hit on their identity. And so a lot of times like with the term picky eater, a lot of times it's an identity that they start to take on. And so if we can look more at creating a food environment that allows them to try different things, they say it takes, I think, 8 to 10 tries. The research says different things, but 8 to 10 tries of a
So
food to
much.
build preference. And so I remember working with some of the eating disorder clients when they come out of residential, they would start eating foods, because we had to eat with them at the table and kind of monitor. And some of them would say, I don't like that. And initially, I was thinking, oh gosh, that's definitely an eating disorder thing. But for some of them, truly, they hadn't tasted that food, the eggplant or whatever it is. And so, yeah, they may not like it. So helping them understand too, like, it's okay. We're gonna do some tries over time. Giving them kind of the freedom to try those foods and offer them to them. And the other side of it too is that dietitians can be so helpful for that, where some kids actually do have like RFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, where it's actually a thing, whether it's sensory issues or a negative experience with food. Some kids actually have that. Other kids, um, they just all go through picky eating stages. And so providing an environment where they don't have to hold on to that title and they can try different foods is really helpful, because odds are most of them are just going to grow out of it. So if they don't learn that they're a picky eater, they just learn I'm trying new foods. Like, it's just me trying new foods. And then when we try foods and we don't like them, just being able to express, gosh, I'm glad I tried that, but I'm probably going to eat something different, so they can see
Yeah.
like you're allowed to not like foods, because
Yeah.
most of us have things we don't like.
My husband and I got in this huge argument I think it was like almost a year ago now. We went out to dinner with my mom to this pizza place in town, and Adeline had just discovered, that's my oldest daughter, she had just discovered that she really liked chicken Alfredo. And I'm like,
Mm,
great, let's add another
yes.
food onto the list. Like, awesome.
Yes, it's an
And so
easy
they
one.
had a kid's chicken Alfredo at this place, and we got pizza, and she got that. And my youngest daughter got this ridiculously giant bowl of spaghetti that she ate three noodles out of. But
Sounds
Adeline
right.
took a bite of the Alfredo and she was like, I don't like this. And I was like, kind of irritated because it was not expensive, but it was a lot of food.
Yeah, it's a lot of
Um,
food.
and like I'm looking at it thinking, yeah, that definitely is just like a frozen chicken breast that they just like heated up.
Yeah.
And then I'm
You're
like,
like,
okay,
I
well
wouldn't even like that.
let me taste it. And I took a
Yeah.
bite and I'm like, yeah, this is not good. Like it just is not, it doesn't taste good. It tastes very fake. And like there's a place and a time for like processed foods, but like that was just
That
not
wasn't
something that
it.
wasn't the hill I was gonna die on. And so
No.
I was like, that's fine. Why don't you just eat some of mine and Evie's her grandma's pizza. And she ate, I don't know, a piece and a half of pizza, which is a lot
Nice.
for 6-year-old or a
Yeah, she
5-year-old.
was hungry.
And my husband and we leave and we get outside and the girls are like, let's go get ice cream. And during the whole dinner, we had kind of talked about there's a really cool new ice cream place. Like if you guys eat a good dinner, we can go get an ice cream. And we get outside and he's like, absolutely not. We can not go get an ice cream. You didn't eat any of your dinner. You ate somebody else's dinner. And I am like,
It's
that was our
hard.
big fight. Like I don't even think we talked the whole drive home because I mean, our kids sobbed the whole way home
Oh,
because mom had promised this. And I was like, I don't think she did anything wrong. I think in that instance, she didn't care for it because it genuinely did not taste good,
yeah.
but she
Yep.
still ate something else on that table without having to
Yep.
order a whole
She
new meal.
listened to her body. That's
Yeah.
what we're looking
And
for.
like I was so frustrated and he was so mad at me for not like backing him up, but like it was just this whole thing of like there are so many foods that are not good. They're gross and that's just going to happen. But like I don't know, it was just like this big like battle. So you just kind of validated my little
Yeah,
stance on the
good.
nasty chicken
Good. Well, and
Alfredo.
sometimes you go to a restaurant you love and you get the whatever you usually get, or you look at it on the menu and you're like, I'm not really in the mood for that today. It's not that I don't like it or that it's nasty. I'm just not in the mood for it. And so we want to teach our daughters how to listen to their bodies and know what is going to taste good in the moment. Because the reality is, if we ate the same exact thing every day, it wouldn't be good anymore. And the same's true for them. There's going to be days, even with the variety, that they don't want the mac and cheese or they don't want whatever it is. But if we don't make some foods bad and some foods good, it gives them the freedom to just choose based on what their bodies are feeling like, and then pay attention to their hunger and fullness cues and eat based on that, not based on emotion and all the other things that we can eat based off of.
Yeah, it is so hard to teach somebody like Adeline will ask all the time, how many bites do I need to get to leave the table? And I'm
Mhm.
like,
It's not about that. Just
I
eat
don't know
bites.
how many bites. Why don't you just eat until your body says that's enough? And
Yeah.
but like she doesn't fully understand like
Shouldn't get it yet.
what that means because
Mhm.
9 times out of 10 they will push their dinner away because they're just not hungry right now. And then
Mhm.
30 minutes later we put them to bed and they're like, "Can we have a snack?" And they want
Sounds
like
right.
a full entree snack and not just, "Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
here's a handful of goldfish." No, they want like,
Yeah.
"Can I have some banana and maybe some bread and something?" You're like, "No."
Yeah.
Yeah, I always try to trick my kids out of being hungry at bed. Like I'm like, you can have a banana. And I'm like, they're gonna say no. They're like, yes. I'm like,
Like,
"Ugh,
okay.
here's your banana.
Here's your bedtime banana that you're gonna eat
Has something wrong with
Yes.
your
3
bedtime
bites
banana."
of, yeah.
Well, I mean, I
Yeah.
think that we all grew up. I think a lot of us grew up with parents that like the eating at the dinner table was an
Mhm.
obedience thing and was like
Yes.
a routine
Eat it
thing. It wasn't
all.
about nutrition. It wasn't about listening to your bodies like that. My dad,
You get what you get and you don't throw a fit. That's
yeah,
what my dinner
Yes.
growing up
get
was.
up, tell you eat the plate, you eat
But,
Yes.
your mom's
I used to
patties.
I used to
Yeah,
hate those rules, but now that my kids do not sit still at dinner and they just wanna,
I
like,
get it.
go wander around to find, a
Mhm.
pencil that
We
they
need some
don't need.
structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I think
And
but
that's a
how
good
okay,
point.
so this will be my last question for this because I literally could talk to you about this forever. But and we need to wrap up. But, how do you then say the right words for things that like, okay, this is junk food, but there's a line with that, but then also like, is it okay to call it healthy food? Like where what do you how do
Good
you
question.
how do you differentiate or change the verbiage?
Mm.
Well, the way that I think about it is that no one food is completely healthy or completely that like not healthy. And I get it from like a medical standpoint. I get why that's the verbiage. But if you think about it, if you eat carrots all day, you're gonna get. I remember there was a news story about a little boy who ate too many carrots and his eyes
Turns
turned
like
orange or his
orange,
skin,
right? Yeah.
whatever it was. Yeah. So it's like that. Okay, that's a healthy food. So what's wrong with that? And so it's not so much about the healthy versus unhealthy distinction. It's more about what does my body need right now. So like if I, before I met with you guys, had a whole chocolate cake to myself, or even just a slice of chocolate cake, I'd probably be here just like super uncomfortable. And it's not because it's unhealthy, it's because that's not what my brain and my body need right now before this. If I had protein and carbs and fat and I had like a full breakfast, it's going to help my brain be online and be able to focus. And so it's more about what does my body need? If I'm going to go do a walkathon with my kids, I'm not going to tell them, well, don't eat the it would be tempting to tell them, but I would try not to tell them, don't eat hot Cheetos before that because they're junk food. It's more of you may not want to eat the hot Cheetos because your heart and your tummy are going to hurt while you're walking. It's not about it being a bad food. It's just right then that's not helpful. Now, if you're at a pool party with a friend, they're eating hot Cheetos, great, that's the place for it. So it's more about helping them just be in tune in the same way we would when you have a busy meeting. If your stomach is growling, it's so uncomfortable and distracting. So you make sure you're eating something that's filling because you don't want your stomach to be growling while you're talking to somebody. So it's just more about making it what does my body need in any given moment. And that helps them to not get that weird, like this food is bad. And so when mom's not around, I'm gonna go binge on it with all my friends because it's fun. It's more of like I can have cookies any time of the day. We may not want to say those words like a 5-year-old, but mentally, you can have cookies any time of the day. It's just there's a lot of times of the day where it actually is working against what you're trying to accomplish because
Yeah.
you get this boost in sugar, then you need a nap at 10 a.m., and it's just all bad. So
Yeah. My
it's
daughter
more
wanted
of just
pizza
body.
on Saturday morning. She wanted pizza for
Hmm.
breakfast, and my husband was like, "You can't have pizza for breakfast." I'm like, "Why not?
Hmm. It's
It's
got the
fine.
things you need
It's
in it. I
got all
mean,
the things. We already have it. It's just a reheat.
yes,
Done. Do it."
yep,
That's what she
yep.
wanted.
As long as it has the things you need. Yeah.
Because I ate an entire bowl, which it was so good at the time. I ate a bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch because I've been doing this thing with reading all your stuff, and I'm like, you know what? That's just what I want this morning. And
Yes.
it was the hardest sugar crash I've had in a long time.
Yes. Cereal does that.
Like, it hurt, like, my stomach like,
Yeah.
it wasn't I could tell that my stomach did not have enough food in it at
Yes.
some point, like, a couple hours later. It had, like, burned through that Cinnamon Toast Crunch, but it wasn't like a hunger, like, I need to fill it with something else. It was like, oh, my stomach hurts. I'm so like
Uncomfortable.
empty with like this gross sugar burnout, or I don't, it was weird. And so
Yes.
like, I
And that's
think,
what we want to pay attention to.
yeah. And I think it changes again as you get older. Like she started working with a nutritionist or something, and it's just fascinating to listen to like, oh yeah, I am over 35. I don't I'm not going to react well to a lot of
Yep,
alcohol late at night
for
on
sure.
top of a pizza. Like it's
Yep.
probably not like I need to have throw in something else. So it's kind of
Yeah, it's listening to that.
yeah, and so I think what like I'm excited that this course is going to teach little kids kind of at an earlier age to listen to that versus like
And cues for
not like a 38-year-old and 35-year-old looking at their food being like, didn't agree with me. All right, now I got
Yeah.
to relearn my food and all that stuff. It's
Yes.
a journey. It's a journey,
Yeah,
but
it is. It
okay.
really is.
all right. Well, again, we could talk to you for forever, but this has been an awesome conversation. And if any of you want to go check out Darling Your Rise, the website is up now and it will be opening soon. And
Also link it in the show notes.
it will be linked down below. And if you're in Oregon and you need some cool counseling from Chantia, she's there for you.
Right here.
So,
Yes.
and that will be linked in there too. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
And
you.
we'll talk to you soon for your other stuff. All
Yes, thank you.
right. Talk to you guys later.